Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking you inside a performance that, well, sounds like it was much more than just a show. We're going to unpack Aja Monet's recent event. She's this incredible poet, lyricist, musician, and try to figure out how she managed to weave together spoken word, music, and frankly, some powerful ideas into something really singular.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
And our sources, they paint a picture of something pretty special. Just for context, this happened Saturday, November 8th, 2025. It was at The Ground in downtown Miami, presented by Live Arts Miami.
Okay, let's jump right into the vibe, the atmosphere. You often hear shows described as high energy, but the words used here are interesting, both intimate and electrifying. How does that even work? Especially in a presumably decent-sized venue, getting both intimacy and that electric feeling.
It tells you something right away, doesn't it? That the environment was very intentionally crafted. Electrifying, that suggests buzz, volume, maybe movement. But intimate, that implies closeness, vulnerability. It's almost a paradox they set up. And listen to this description. The space felt spiritual and profoundly human.
Yeah, spiritual. That word stands out. It's different from just, entertainment. It suggests something deeper was asked of the audience. Maybe not just passive watching, but active listening, participation.
I think that's exactly it. It wasn't just about appreciating the art. It was
Yeah.
about being present in that space she created. When you get that spiritual dimension, it shifts from performance to shared experience. It's about allowing for vulnerability in a crowd. And the result, according to the sources, it fostered collective reflection and joy.
Collective reflection and joy. Again, that pairing. Reflection often feels quiet, personal, like reading a poem alone. Joy feels outward, loud, communal. Blending those successfully, it suggests her artistry really hit a nerve, connecting the inner world with the shared moment.
Right. It's like she created a space for maybe communal processing. You could feel deeply, think critically, but also feel uplifted together. It wasn't just mixing art forms. It sounds like it was mixing emotional states, taking difficult themes perhaps, and finding a shared way through them.
Okay, so we've got the feeling, this unique atmosphere. But let's get into the mechanics. How was this achieved? That's what our listeners really want to know. The sources point to the fusion of genres, and crucially, the fact she performed with her full band.
Yes, the full band. That's probably the key structural piece that takes it from, say, a poetry reading to that electrifying event we mentioned. Aja Monet wasn't just reciting, she was in dialogue, with sound, live. The sources break it down into three main things she wove together: spoken word, soulful melodies, and, this is important, jazz-infused instrumentation.
Let's spend a moment on those. Spoken word, that's direct, sharp, demands you follow the story, the argument. Soulful melodies, they grab the heart, right? Provide that immediate emotional connection. But jazz-infused instrumentation. What does jazz specifically bring to the table when you're dealing with potentially heavy social themes?
That's where it gets really interesting. Jazz, fundamentally, it's about conversation, call and response, improvisation. It's dynamic. So when you pair that with spoken word, the band isn't just background music. They're active participants, co-narrators almost. The improvisation, the sort of fluidity of jazz, it adds this living tension to the fixed words of a poem. So if Monet is talking about liberation, the band isn't just playing a liberation theme. They might be improvising the feeling of struggle and release in that very moment.
That makes sense. It adds unpredictability. Improvisation itself kind of mirrors themes like resilience, doesn't it? Adapting, reshaping. If the music was just a set score, maybe the message feels a bit static. But the jazz keeps it dynamic, evolving.
Exactly. And think about her delivery. The sources noted her voice was both commanding yet tender. That's quite a range to navigate. Commanding gives you the authority, the power needed for maybe political points or calls to action. But tender, that brings in the vulnerability, the personal, the empathy needed for themes like love or personal struggle.
So she's embodying that tension right there in her voice, shifting between the poet's authority and maybe the singer's vulnerability, which I imagine creates a fantastic space for the band to play within, to react to.
It absolutely does. And the sources really emphasize this wasn't just a singer and a band. They highlight the synergy between Aja and her musicians elevated the performance. Synergy meaning the whole was greater than the sum of its parts. They were listening intently to each other, building something together in real time.
I think this is where the analysis really shows something important. Without that synergy, the music could easily just become wallpaper. Maybe even soften the edges of sharp poetry. But if they're truly collaborating, if the drums punctuate a line or a horn answers a phrase,
then the whole thing becomes something else entirely. It moves beyond just poetry show or concert. It transcends genre, maybe even generation, as the sources suggest,
Right, it becomes this experience where the rhythm carries the weight of a line, or a melody expresses an emotion that words alone can't quite capture.
making it both immediately felt but also intellectually complex.
Okay, brilliant. So we've looked at the how, the genre fusion, the band's role, the vocal style. Let's pivot to the what. What was she actually saying through this powerful setup? What were the core messages?
The sources point to three main themes, which feel both classic and very current: love, liberation, and resilience. So, significant, weighty ideas being channeled through that jazz and poetry mix.
And if we connect that back to the structure, resilience, for example,
Yeah.
that theme seems perfectly suited for that dialogue between the fixed text and the improvising band we talked about. How did you weave these together in her storytelling?
It sounds like she guided the audience carefully. The sources say her storytelling moved listeners through moments of personal introspection and communal empowerment. You see that arc, starting perhaps with the individual feeling, the quiet thought, the introspection. Then, as the music swells, as the energy builds, that personal feeling gets connected to a larger shared strength, the communal empowerment.
Ugh, that explains that earlier phrase, collective reflection and joy. You go inward first, reflect, but then you're brought outward into a shared feeling of possibility, of strength.
It validates your own experience by linking it to everyone else's in the room.
Yeah, that makes total sense. That journey from me to we is often where the political power in art lies, isn't it? Which probably explains the audience reaction. They mentioned cheers and standing ovations from a captivated audience.
Right, these sound like gut reactions,
Yeah.
not just polite applause, but real physical responses to being moved and challenged.
And that kind of reaction, that visible impact, it underlines why the sources say this event reaffirmed her status as one of Miami's most influential creative voices. She's not just performing, she's shaping conversations.
Absolutely, and that influence comes from the intent behind it all. The final description used was that the night was defined by the fusion of poetry, music, and purpose. Purpose. That suggests the art wasn't just for its own sake. It was aimed at something sparking thought, maybe inspiring action, definitely fostering connection around these big themes.
So, wrapping this up, what we've really explored today, for you listening, isn't just a concert review. It's more like looking at the architecture of impact. How Aja Monet used the intimacy of spoken word, amplified it with the sort of responsive power of jazz, and created this space where difficult ideas like liberation and resilience could be felt together.
And that leaves us with a final thought, something for you to maybe mull over. We talked about how these themes, resilience, liberation, can be expressed through quiet intimacy or through the power of a full band. Think about the power dynamic there. When a message comes through one intimate voice, it perhaps invites quiet reflection. But when that same message gets amplified, driven by improvisation and collective sound, does it change the demand on the listener? Does it shift from reflection towards maybe a feeling of needing to act? Does amplifying the message musically become its own kind of symbolic call? Just consider how changing the medium might subtly or not so subtly change the meaning.